Now, the rest of the story. Every job he took, Eddie did everything he could to cover up, and yet each time his employer found out that Eddie was an addict. He got hooked the way many do on the white powder, unsuspecting that it could lead to the hard stuff, but it did. Eddie persistently refused rehabilitation. As long as he could get his hands on the substance that enslaved him, he'd be okay, he said. Eventually, everyone who knew him was repulsed. Nobody even tried to help after a while. But this is the rest of the story. Once upon a time, Eddie Barker had everything going for him. Even a Ph.D. from Tennessee State, a prime faculty position at Ohio State. And then about 7 years ago, he started on the powder. It made him feel good, he said. He was convinced, in fact, that it was good for him. Before long, Eddie was up to 2 ounces a day. He thought he was still functioning, but colleagues began noticing. He was into the hard stuff before resigning his college position. Thereafter, he interviewed for a job as a department store salesperson. The personnel director had no idea that Eddie was an addict. Not even the other employees nor his fellow trainees suspected. But after his first 2 weeks on the job, alert customers observing telltale signs reported to the store manager, and Eddie was called on the carpet. There was one warning, clean up your act. Then there was a second, and a third, and Eddie was out. A woman friend felt sorry for Eddie and offered him work in a clothing boutique she owned. The position was partly management, partly sales. It was 4 months before the situation presented itself as impossible, and Eddie was looking for a job again. For the next 2.5 years, Eddie sought employment as a butler, one family after another, each employer discovering and unwilling to tolerate Eddie's addiction. Then he got a job as a security guard for a department store. Surely there, nobody would notice that he was hooked, he thought. He was wrong. He was fired. By now, Eddie's addiction was so profound that it became obvious even during subsequent job interviews. He was hurting for cash, and supporting his habit was his prime priority, and soon Eddie was starving to finance purchases of over 100 ounces a month. Of course, if Eddie had not been an addict, if he had been able to hold down a regular job, he would never have been forced to go into business for himself, promoting his own line of food products. A business which is now providing him with greater financial success than he could ever have hoped for otherwise, and which is also supporting his addiction. You can't feel sorry for Eddie Barker, even though folks still run when they see him coming. Eddie's life is happy as it is. And he's harming no one as long as he keeps to himself. For you see, the white powder that started it all was the powdered form of a common food, which Eddie had taken to eating raw. It's a genuine craving, he says. He couldn't get unhooked if he wanted to, he says, from garlic. And now you know the rest of the story.